I was approached twice, 2 different times to sell the company. The first time, I just had my dad with me.
Okay.
And it was my dad and I trying to negotiate legal terms and trying to value the company, and it was a huge mistake.
Welcome to The Journey. I'm Luke Paterson. Today, my guest is Omar Maalouf, owner, CEO, and founder of Momentum Glass. He's also a personal friend of mine that I've known since college. Omar founded Momentum Glass in 2011 with a vision for providing superior glass and glazing solutions across Texas. Growth at Momentum has been consistent year after year. The company grew from him and his wife and 2 employees to now over 265 employees in 5 locations in the southwestern part of the United States. Momentum has done projects that vary from universities, hotels, hospitals, multifamily projects, office buildings, and most recently, the large Tesla facility outside of Austin, Texas. In our conversation today, you will hear about how Omar took a chance on himself, built the business, and ultimately took on a private equity partner and negotiated a liquidity event. Welcome, Omar.
Good to be here.
You are the founding CEO of a glass company, a very successful glass company, I might add. And so I'm just going to jump right in. Tell us how you got into the glass business.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, I think. Graduated Sam Houston State University, where you and I were a little bit of friends, a little bit of adversaries, and went to work for a company called Brown and Root. Started in construction in the petrochemical side for 2.5 years, and got an opportunity to work on the Houston Astros baseball stadium. And so when I went from petrochemical to commercial construction, I enjoyed the commercial construction aspect, being able to show people what I did instead of being in a petrochemical unit. It was pretty cool. So worked on the baseball stadium for about 2.5 years, and the glass company that did some of the glass work on the stadium gave me an opportunity to go be a project manager at that company. Mm-hmm. And, took the chance because I just didn't see, I wanted to stay in commercial construction is really what it was. I didn't want to go back to the petrochemical side. And my wife and I were having our first son, and decided to give my resignation and start with a small glass company. And the rest is history. I worked with that company for about 11 years.
Okay.
Learned the trade, learned a lot about running a small business, and after 11 years, thought it was about time for me to try to do something on my own. And so that's when I started my company.
All right. Well, let's kind of pick it up from there then. Yeah. When you're starting a business, an entrepreneur, you've obviously never run a business before. I'm assuming you had some doubts. You said earlier, I took a chance, so you're taking another chance on yourself. Right? Tell us about that experience. Tell us what that was like. Were you really worried? Were you worried about how am I going to get my first customer? How am I going to regularly pay my bills, meet my obligations? You're starting your family. The world's changing for you. So tell me about what that was like.
It's crazy. The world was changing pretty quick. Like I said, we were about to have our first son. I'd like to think I had run the other glass company for a good 5 to 6 years. So I had some good experience managing the P&Ls, managing the field activities, managing the office activities. Mm-hmm. So transitioning to opening my own company, it was stressful and it was nervous. And trying to figure out where the work would come from was a bit scary. I had a few clients that trusted that I would be able to handle their business. So they gave me some opportunities. But when you start your own company, there are a lot of people that say they're going to support you. And then when you get ready to ask for their support, they're a little nervous, a little hesitant, because now you're on your own. And so the thought of having a lot of work right out of the gate and then it shrinking was real. And so you have to hustle. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't have an accounting person. My wife ended up leaving her job as a teacher, and she learned QuickBooks and learned HR and learned how to do payroll. I was doing sales and project management and field activity, and we hustled, and it's scary. We took all our money out of our 401k. We didn't take a paycheck, my wife and I, for the first 6 months. We made sure that our employees, the field guys, got paid. We did not let our kids know that we were starting our own company. We wanted them to feel very calm throughout the whole process. So not changing any of their activities, doing sports after school and doing whatever we were doing as a family stayed the same. My wife and I just lived on a very, very tight budget for the first 6 months. It's a hustle. It's a grind. You just wear many hats. You can't be scared. And you have to be able to take calculated risks. And I think that's what we did starting the company.
Well, you mentioned another, I think I get to talk to entrepreneurs and business owners from time to time, which is a great part of my job. So you mentioned another thing you just hit on was sacrifice. Can you go a little bit deeper on that, just in terms of what it really meant to you? And clearly, Alicia, your wife, right, because you're doing this together, which is a little bit of a unique story, a great part of your story, but you did it together, you're all in together, but it was a sacrifice. I'm sure whether you wanted to be or not, probably fearful moments, tough conversations. Tell us about the sacrifice, what it meant, because when we talk through this into this podcast, we're going to know more about your success and all the things you've been able to accomplish now. But so much in that beginning was chance and sacrifice and risk. So I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, when I was at the other company before my company, I had a nice car, I had a good salary, I had travel opportunities. I had a very good life, and I was living very well, and my wife was living very well. We as a family were doing very well. And then when you go off and you start your own company, you have to scale everything back. So financing vehicles, quitting jobs and working together instead of working separately, not going out to great steak dinners, not being able to travel with couples that you had continuously traveled and vacation with, not being able to do the things that you were easily enjoying and had no reservation doing, and now having to hold back. I don't want to sound like it was completely tough and we were sweating and paying bills. It wasn't that tough, but you scale back on the finer things in life, on the things that you took for granted you can't do anymore.
Right.
You have to maintain a very strict budget. You have to understand that your employees come first. You have to make payroll. You have to pay the vendor bills. You have to take care of everybody else, and then you. And so it's a different aspect, and you just have to. Scaling everything back was a big thing for us, and it didn't bother us. I came from a very modest background. I was able to build up some nice equity in my other company. I cashed out all the equity and invested it into the new company. But hard work is something that I think my dad ingrained in me and instilled in me, and being able to scale back and not enjoy some of the fruits of our labor for a certain period of time, that's okay. I have no problem with that. And I just wanted our kids to not know the difference. I wanted to make sure that they were able to enjoy the football and the baseball practices and go to movies and be with their friends. My wife and I scaled it back, but we did okay.
And you did a great job.
Yeah.
So when you started the business, the company that you operate now, what was your plan? Was it, I'm going to build this into such a huge, so you have over 260 or 265 plus employees.
Right.
You have 5 locations, kind of the southwestern part of the United States. You've done projects all over the U.S. and some really notable big projects that we can talk about later. Yeah. So what was your plan starting out? In other words, hey, one of these days I'm going to build a huge, giant Tesla facility outside of Austin. So tell me about what your goal was when you set out. Was it a huge goal, or was it more of a moderate goal?
No, it was very moderate, Luke. I'll tell you, the thing that the plan was to just do 2 or 3 jobs a year, to do really good work on those couple of jobs. But when you're bidding work and you are not afforded the opportunity to just have negotiated work as the start. Then you bid work and you bid work and you bid work. And then all of a sudden you get a bunch of these jobs. Well, that 2 or 3 job plan ends up being 5 or 6 jobs. So you're not able to manage the work in the manner that you thought you were going to be able to. So our plan of just doing some small jobs and just doing a little bit of small work, well, that exploded. We had huge growth in the first, to be perfectly frank, we've had huge growth since we've started. Year-over-year growth was unbelievable from year 1 to year 2, and so on. So yeah, the plan to do small work and to be careful and to manage our process, it didn't happen. We just got big quick.
So my next question was going to be, because we were talking about earlier about the sacrifice and the cutbacks and the things you had to do, was going to be, when did you kind of feel like you were getting airborne? When that time of running your business felt a little bit, okay, I think we're going to make this. It feels okay. I think we're onto something here. It feels pretty good. What was that experience like when you had that moment, and how long did it take you to get there?
Yeah, I would tell you that we started feeling okay after about 6 months, and I know it's a pretty short runway, but we picked up enough backlog in the first 6-8 months, let's say a year, to know that we were going to be okay for the next 2 or 3 years. Our projects are pretty long. After the first 6 months, we started turning some of the projects over, some of the smaller work over. We were making some money. I could see that what we were doing was correct. We started building some backlog. I started feeling very comfortable about the move that I made. Understanding that your P&Ls and understanding that you're making money and knowing what your overhead costs are, that's a big thing in our industry. And I could see that we were doing okay, and I could see that our backlog was going to be profitable. And that's when I was able to take a deep breath. And that's what I said earlier, is that 6-month period where we didn't take a paycheck. At 6 months, I said, okay, now I can start taking a paycheck. Now we've got enough under us where I feel comfortable.
Well, that had to be a great feeling. It is for any business owner.
Unbelievable.
You got to breathe a little bit, and it feels good. I'm sure very rewarding that you did take the sacrifice. You took the chance, as you said earlier, and that seems to be working. I mean, that's got to feel very rewarding, and obviously you've enjoyed more success since then. So you're getting to the point where you're feeling airborne. I'll say you are probably thinking about, you have a company, you have multiple employees, you've got teams. You're the leader now. Tell me a little bit about your thought process on your leadership, on building teams, hiring employees, maybe firing employees, and just that sort of building the infrastructure, and so that you could scale and that you could do more work and create more business and opportunity.
Fortunately for me, Luke, when I started the company, we had a lot of people that wanted to join immediately. So many people wanted to come with us. I think from my other company, and I think my reputation, I think people wanted to be part of something. I started in 2011. It was just coming out of the downturn, so there was a lot of unemployed people as well. So I had a pretty good pick of the litter, I'd say, of quality type employees. When we started getting airborne, to use that term, we started bringing on people that I had worked with in the past. And even to this day, I would tell you, our most senior leadership I've worked with for over 15 plus years. They came from the other company. They trusted me. They trusted the process. They trusted the leadership. And I think, ethically, I think ethics has a big play in that. I don't think I ever purposely have wronged anybody. And I take pride in that. I think, being a good leader, you have to stand by your word. I think when you say you're going to do something, you better do it, no matter how hard it is. And we've had some issues, we've struggled, but you don't quit. And I think a lot of the team that's come with me or that we've built can see that in me. I don't pass the buck. I walk my shop every day. I go talk to our team every day. I'm involved still to this day in a lot of things. I let our team do the work. I'm not micromanaging, but I want them to know that I'm there, and if there's anything that they need, they can come ask. And I think being a face and going to our different locations, traveling to Dallas or Austin or to Nashville or Atlanta, seeing the people, letting them know that I'm here. I think that's a big play in this as well. I've known some people that rule from a high seat and don't get involved in any of the lower level activities, and that's completely opposite of the way I like to.
Would you generally say that's probably a mistake?
I would totally think that's a mistake, at least at our level company. Yeah. Now, I'm not talking about Coca-Cola and McDonald's, but at our level company, interaction with our employees, letting our teams know that, hey, I'm here. There's an open door policy. You have an issue, come see me. We'll try to work it out. I think that bodes well for our team. I think the ability to engage with anybody in the company is important.
One of the things I picked up on was interesting, and I'm curious about, did it surprise you? You clearly laid the groundwork as even a pretty young guy, Brown and Root, your previous business, your previous efforts there, building relationships, people watching. You didn't know they were watching, but later you start a company. They want to come work with Omar.
Yeah.
So were you surprised at perhaps maybe the number of people that were watching Omar in his younger years when you were, trying to run projects and you had to start your own business? And were you also surprised at the impact that had, so that, people just keeping in mind that no matter, even if you haven't started your own company yet, people are watching, and that could be a potential opportunity?
Extremely surprised. You don't realize what perception you're giving out.
Yeah.
I think people need to understand that what you say and what you do, there are hundreds, thousands of people watching your move. And if you act like a fool, or if you don't stand by your word, if you don't work hard and you expect others to stand by their work and others to work hard, you won't be respected.
Yeah.
And so when I started the company, when I say my wife and I started the company,
right.
It's not a I. When we started the company, I go back to what I said earlier, reputation was a big thing. We had vendors that appreciated the way that I handled business in the past, paying our bills on time, discussing issues if need be openly, employees the same way. So I think building a good reputation, I think people see that. Whether you realize they're watching it or not, people do see that, and it's important.
Probably still pays dividends in a way, again, that you may not have even realized years later.
Right.
So I think it's really good to keep that in mind, that no matter what stage you're in, even the earliest stages, even if you haven't realized your dream or started your own company, it can have an impact even as a young person.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So that's a great thing to take away. So you're airborne now. You've got teams. You've certainly got a lot of people involved now in your business. So remind me the year you started.
We started in 2011.
Momentum Glass in 2011. So you've been at it a while. So a number of years you had an experience with private equity.
Yeah.
Started that. Tell me about your experience. Sometimes that's something business owners and entrepreneurs run into or have the option to deal with, or an opportunity, I would say. Then there's, and then there's pros and cons to this experience. I'd love to hear your story.
So we started in 2011, and after about 6 years, we had so much growth. We were approached by a group of private equity people to come, join their team. I didn't even know what private equity was. I've had my nose to the grind, building a company, working on this, and a friend of mine said, you could probably sell your company for X amount of dollars. And I looked at him and I said, you're crazy. There isn't nobody that's going to buy that company for that. And he says, they do it all the time. And so he kind of explained private equity to me, and introduced me to a financial bank type person that marketed our company. Mm-hmm. And when I started seeing the interest in the company, I said, well, great, somebody wants to support us and help us get to another level. Mm-hmm. Part of the intrigue was, talking to these private equities companies. We were in Houston. When they came in, it was, hey, look, why don't we take what you're doing in Houston and model it in Dallas or in Austin or in different locations throughout the country. I loved it. I thought this was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. Being able to take Momentum, our brand, and build it amongst the whole Southwest. And I had ideas of, Denver and Phoenix and Washington. And, together we had some really good ideas of where we were going to take the company. The other thing that it had afforded me to do was to be able to, take chips off the table. That's what everybody talks about. Look, you can create some wealth for your family, remove that and give it to Avidian, and basically be able to work and know that you've got something left over for your kids and your family in the future. And it was just like, I never heard of anything like that. I thought it would be a great idea to build the Momentum brand, and we took the chance and did it. We entered into an agreement with a private equity group here in Houston.
You don't have to tell us the specifics, but generally, what was your expectation going into that transaction or to that partnership, we'll call it?
Well, I thought that they would assist in bringing more work. They have some unique contacts that I didn't have. Being able to parlay some of those contacts, with what we were doing, I thought that would be a good opportunity for us to get bigger. They were able to provide us some capital to grow. What we did is we ended up expanding our fabrication facility. We built a 120,000 square foot facility. We were able to open locations in Dallas and Austin and Nashville and Atlanta. We were able to hire the people to help manage those locations. We grew our revenue, as of today, probably 4x from when I started 5 years ago with the private equity group.
Yeah.
So we've done really well in the revenue side, growing the business, opening the locations, and increasing our manufacturing capacity. So we've done good there. The sales part of it, we didn't get what we wanted to out of the sales part of it. I think we've been focusing so hard on getting our processes in place, understanding our capacity, opening the other locations and making sure that those locations were running well and functioning well. So we haven't really tapped into the resources of the contact side, but I think there's things to come where we'll be able to hit those points.
That's great. I do want to touch on just sort of that period of time when you're dealing with them. Really, I'd like to know for listeners that your experience, there's so many complexities when you're talking about selling even a portion of your company, right? There are, cultural things that you're trying to work out between your team, but you also have hard numbers you're having to work with. What is the valuation of this business? How do you get advice on that? There are tax outcomes that you have to think about and be planning on. There's legal documents that you need counsel on. There are, then transitioning to these chips that you had over here, and now they're over here. How do you then plan for your future and make sure, this cash flows for me and provides the income that I'm going to need for even a partial exit, if not a whole exit in some cases. So did you have a team around you? And if so, tell me about that team. And if not, would you recommend it? Would you have done it differently?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So I was approached twice, 2 different times to sell the company. The first time, I just had my dad with me.
Okay.
And it was my dad and I trying to negotiate legal terms and trying to value the company, and it was a huge mistake, and look, we all love our dad, but wrong move. So first bit of advice, don't bring your family into the negotiating
Okay,
table.
great, good.
So the second time around, I realized, okay, as much as I love my dad, not a good idea. Let's hire the right people. So I would tell you that the first thing that I would recommend is hiring a great M&A lawyer, mergers and acquisitions lawyer. There's absolutely no better idea than to spend the money on the M&A guy. They are well worth it, and you are going to spend some money. But if you look at what you spend versus the return, it's well worth the money. Take it from me. M&A lawyer is the number one thing that you need to do. The second thing I would suggest anybody does is a good tax accountant. Not just a regular accountant, but a tax accountant. That's something that I did not do. I wish I would have. I would have been able to do things a little bit differently with the funding, with the proceeds, with how the transaction occurred, had I had a good tax accountant. So part of the lessons learned here, don't hire your dad, don't work with your family, and make sure that you hire a good tax accountant and an M&A guy. And I think if you've got a good tax guy and a good M&A legal team, that's the best way to set up for success on a transaction.
Do those two people are the ones you're going to rely on valuation and quarterbacking everything, or do you feel like maybe there's even one or two other pieces of that team that you need?
Yeah, the valuation, I had my internal accountant.
Okay.
Or our accounting group hire that. So you have an accounting group who's doing your books, quarterly and monthly and whatever, and then your tax guy who tells you which way this transaction needs to occur, and then your M&A guy. So between those three, I just stayed hands off and I deferred everything to them. The other thing you have to be able to do, which I don't think I did successfully, but I've learned, is you have to stand firm on some of the grounds that your lawyer wants you to stand firm on. It's negotiation 101.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not, I felt like I should have held firm on a few points that I caved in on. You have to trust the lawyers. You cannot be so excited about the payoff that you compromise some of the values and some of the legal terms.
Mm-hmm.
So trust the M&A guy.
Mm-hmm.
Stay firm with your process.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be willing to cave in on some of the terms.
Figure out up front your non-negotiables.
That's it.
And don't bend on them. That is great advice.
And don't be afraid to walk away from the deal.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, what the term is dry powder.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of private equity groups out there looking to invest and put some of their money to work.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't happen with this one, there will be others. So don't be afraid to walk away from the deal. These are really important points that I wish somebody would have told me.
I was curious, have you ever had a business partner? Have you always been just the sole 100% owner, let's say you and your wife, of the company, or have you had partners before? What do you think about that?
No, I haven't had partners before. My wife and I did it. I have a hard time bringing on a partner. Excluding the private equity group that we merged with, in 2017. But no, I don't think that bringing a partner on is a good thing, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have to depend on somebody else. You had a gentleman here, Gary Cook,
mm-hmm.
who talked about having partners in his company.
Yep.
And our stories are very similar. I appreciated listening to Gary's podcast. And Gary talked about a partner that they had an issue with. Mm-hmm. And I would tell you, I'd bet on myself. Mm-hmm. And to bring a partner in, that's betting on you and somebody else. And I want to bet on me. There's a trust thing. Mm-hmm. There's a are you going to work as hard as I'm going to work type thing. And I can trust myself, and I know my work ethic, and I don't want to have to compromise for somebody else. So I would strongly suggest, if you have the desire to open up a company, whatever kind of company that is, and you can trust and bet on yourself, then you should do that, and you don't need to bring somebody else with you. You get to reap the benefits of all the rewards, and you know what? If it doesn't work out, then you can at least say, I tried, mm-hmm. and it just wasn't in the cards this time. Mm-hmm. But if it was the other way, and you had a partner, then the rewards would have to be shared. Mm-hmm. The negativity, you could blame somebody else instead of owning it yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I think those two things are why I would always want to do it myself.
Interesting. So it all starts and stops with you then.
Yes.
You're the top of the pyramid, and there's no one else to, like you said, blame. So let's talk about culture a little bit. You're an established company at this point. You have hundreds of employees, several locations, lots of projects, big projects. I mean, really, really beautiful work you guys do, by the way. I'd love to see some of the things you could do. I would encourage people to even go to your LinkedIn page, Momentum Glass, and just see some of the projects you guys do. It's up there, and it's impressive. It's really something. And so talk about your culture. So you're building teams. You have a private equity group involved now. Tell us about how you see culture from Momentum Glass, what it means to you, and how you prioritize it, and how you navigate that world of making it the company that you want it to be.
That's a great question. I'm not a real frilly guy. Culture and those terms are something that I'm not used to having to deal with. Mm-hmm. We're a construction company. Mm-hmm. We get our hands dirty. We do a lot of sweat equity type things. Culture is very new to me, and I have no problem admitting that. A lot of people have slogans on their walls and Christmas parties and monthly birthday calendar invite, whatever great frilly stuff comes along. We're learning that right now. I would tell you our culture is hard work. Our culture is ethical, honest work. And I would tell you that culture starts from the top down. You can't lie about culture. People will see through that. If you're trying to promote something that's not true to you, people will see right through it. So for us, culture is what I believe in and what I share with our team. And I would tell you, hard work, ethics are the two. I've said it probably 5 or 6 times throughout this conversation. Your word is your bond, and our team and our culture throughout, whether it's in the field or whether it's in our shop or whether it's project management, your word is your bond when it comes to our culture. We're still learning how to do some of the office environment type culture, and it's a work in progress for us right now, because again, we've started with 2 employees and we've grown rapidly, and understanding and implementing some of the culture that I know I'd like to do, we're still working on that part of it now. And I think that's, for us at Momentum, that's the biggest part of the company that we want to build next, is that culture. There's value to that.
There definitely is, and I would just echo what you said a little bit, but the only thing is, a good culture, however you think of it, can help you thrive as you have in good times, but it also helps sustain you in difficult times and challenging times. So let's go to COVID for a moment.
Yeah.
That was a difficult time for most people. I don't know how it impacted you specifically or the construction business, but how did COVID exactly impact you, your employees? How did it impact your business, and how did you work through it?
So construction was deemed an essential business, and because we were deemed essential business, we operated open doors 100%.
Okay.
We have so there's 3 different phases to ours. There's the management phase, the office phase. There's the shop phase where we produce a lot of our material, and then there's the field phase. So 3 different phases in our company. COVID affected our shop more than anything. The social distancing, the 6-foot distance from employee to employee in a work environment, that was our biggest issue. Was keeping that distance, and then we had a few people come down with COVID, and then all of a sudden you're having to quarantine 5 or 6 people that they were in contact with in that line. So it was interesting. No one had ever experienced something like this, so there's no real playbook on how to do it. We listened to the CDC, and we listened to our peers. I'm in a peer group, and I think that provided a lot of insight on how to handle some of the issues in COVID. But generally speaking, COVID was not a bad thing for us, and I know other people it was bad, but for the construction industry and for our company in particular, we didn't take a hit. As a matter of fact, because of COVID, I think escalation of pricing, we were able to get a bigger backlog. We grew through COVID. Wow. While other people weren't able to do that.
Yeah. Was it easy getting people to come, like in your shop as an example? Did you have to deal with less employees there, scale back a little bit for all this distancing business? And if so, was it difficult to get people to come back?
So the interesting thing is it allowed us to adapt a little bit differently to our work. Instead of working 8 or 10 hours a day, we worked a couple of shifts.
Okay.
So instead of bringing 65 people in the shop and working all during the day, we brought 40 in the day and then another 20 at night. So we were able to spread them out and start building a second shift type work environment. Things that we hadn't really thought about doing previously. This made us adapt to that. There's a few other things. Face shields and safety equipment that we implemented during COVID. Now that we're using now, so. You were able to learn a little bit, to pivot, to get a little better in your process and in your safety to help for the future work. So, learning experience, pivoting a little bit, making us a little bit better, I believe.
Well, I think that's the nature of an entrepreneur. I mean, just going through adversity, seeing hurdles, things you got to climb over, and just doing it and figuring it out and working through it. I mean, that's essentially the part of that story, right?
That's it. I mean, you can't stop, right? You can't quit on a tough time. You have to figure out how to make it work. And again, I go back to the team. We have a great group of guys that, like I said, have been with us for an extended period of time, and everybody stepped up. Everybody, our shop people stepped up. Our leaders in the shop stepped up to work a second shift, to spread the guys out, to identify processes where we could, be socially distant in the shop or work at the second shift. Our field guys having to use face shields or standing outside apart from each other. It's not normal in our industry. You have to be close to each other, but we figured out different ways to install, different ways to accomplish the task at hand. So you credit the guys in the field for thinking outside the box. You credit the guys in the shop for thinking outside the box. Everybody stepped back and said, okay, we can do this. We just have to figure out a different way of doing it, not the same old. And that's a great testament to our team.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. A good part of that culture conversation as well. It
Exactly.
really led to things like that. So I want to kind of come to the point where you've got these chips off the table, private equity a little bit. I'm sure that was a nice event for you. But, there brings complexities. Right? I mean, you have a family to provide for. I think at that time, you still had kids that weren't quite in college, and now they are.
Right.
So they're entering that phase of your life. You and your wife are kind of entering that phase of your life. Empty nesters, I think, kind of pretty close to that.
Yep.
But you've got, estate planning, you've got cash flow, personal things you're trying to accomplish, future goals, you have taxes, you have risk. Being a wealthier person now and being a successful business owner, there's just risk. There's a target on your back a little bit sometimes. And of course, there's how to invest all these things and so that make it work for you better for the long term. How did you handle that? Usually entrepreneurs are used to controlling everything. They're at the center of all and trying to be an expert in all these things. How did you do it? How did you find what was best?
You hit the nail on the head because I tried to control everything. I tried to learn and handle my own finances. I had a few banks that were working with me, and I was kind of trying to tell them which way I wanted to go, and tell them how I wanted my estate planning to go, and tell them, and you realize that you got to be an expert at what you know, and you have to hire experts to handle the stuff that you don't know. And I learned a pretty quick lesson on that. And so, being able to find a team that you can trust. I think the biggest thing is finding somebody that you can trust to handle that, because when you do experience an event like I experienced, now all of a sudden everybody wants to be your buddy. Everybody's, they all come out of the woodworks, and that's just the nature of it, and that's fine. Yeah. But you don't know who to trust. You don't know who has your best interest, and so I was trying to manage that as well while managing growth and managing teams and whatnot, and I realized that pretty quickly I realized that that's not my forte, and so finding a partner that you can say, okay, look, here's everything, figure out what to do with it, don't screw it up. That was the biggest thing for me, and that's how you and I connected.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so that was how you did it. Again, I think that you've kind of just evolved and learned as you've become even more successful. Tell me about sort of the next steps for Momentum Glass, and even more for Omar, just either personally or from a business standpoint. You obviously got great kiddos that are in college and having fun going to games and things like that. So tell us kind of what's on the horizon for you from a business standpoint and from a personal standpoint.
Well, we're still looking to expand. We're looking to expand the company into the eastern side of the United States, the Carolinas, Virginia, maybe up into Washington, and then possibly into the Phoenix and Denver. I'm still I love Denver. I love the mountains. So any reason to open an office and be able to get out there and do some.
I keep hearing this Denver theme.
Well, there's a reason. Any reason to get out there and do some snowboarding or skiing with the kids. So I think we still have expansion on our minds. I'm only 49. I got plenty of time left in this business. I enjoy what I do. If I didn't like it, I'd be trying to get out.
What do you enjoy most of it? About being an entrepreneur, about being a business owner, with all the highs and lows, what do you enjoy most?
I enjoy problem solving. I think that's the best way to do it. Every day there's a new issue, and I don't enjoy the mundane parts of it. I don't enjoy project management and installation, but I enjoy trying to help the project managers through a situation. I enjoy trying to help our field team through a situation. So I enjoy what I call firefighting or problem solving. It's something new every time. It's a new, different twist on a same old routine. So that part of the business is what I enjoy focusing on and working with the most. And then secondly, I enjoy developing new relationships and opening up different locations and building the team and instilling that culture that we're trying to build, instilling that into the new teams and getting the brand out there more. So those are the two things that I really enjoy.
So you're going to be working on expanding Momentum Glass even further, as you said, into the eastern part of the U.S. and growing the company. Very good. Anything on the personal side that you want to be doing?
I'm enjoying, spending time with the boys. I've got two boys in college, and one's about to graduate in May, and so we're trying to spend a little time with him before he goes off and becomes in the real world. And then my younger one is he's at LSU and having a little fun over there with him and going to some of the football games and being part of that crazy Cajun culture is a lot of fun. But my wife and I are enjoying being able to hang out with them more because we've got a good team working at Momentum. I'm able to spend time with the boys at this time in their lives. So it's been a lot of fun.
How do you think ultimately being an entrepreneur and all that comes with being a business owner impacted your sons and your kids?
I think they saw
what do they see? Okay, good.
Yeah. And it's a great question. I said earlier, we never let them know that we had any kind of financial struggles. And I still to this day think that's the right move. I wanted them to always be able to enjoy what their friends were doing and what I wanted them to do. But I think they saw that Dad gets up and leaves for work at 5:30 in the morning and doesn't get home till 6 o'clock at night. And, they understood what work ethic was. It got good. Again, I'm not going to say it was always that early. I was able to at least take the boys to school, so to have some one-on-one time with them as the company started, getting that lift off that we were talking about earlier. But I think they saw good work ethic. I think they saw what the rewards of hard work give you, and I can tell you that both those kids, in their schooling, and in the high school and junior high and in college, have done really well by putting in the hard work. So they're doing really well because of that.
Well, it seems, at what I know of you, that you've done a magnificent job where some people can go so hard charging towards a career or professional goals that the family just suffers, and you didn't do that. You've had a pretty good job, great job, fantastic job. I'm sure, again, this is where Alicia gets a lot of credit, but you continue to make your family a priority, and they're thriving. Obviously, your kiddos are doing great, but you can certainly see from an entrepreneur standpoint how really trying to be really excellent at both of those things, not one over the other, is a must. You have to have that right in both cases.
I think work-life balance is, and I've heard that word, that buzz term, work-life balance it's key. It really is key. My wife and I both worked. The good thing for us is either I would take the boys to school later on, or she would take the boys to school. We always had that time in the car to either listen to music together or talk about, what they had ahead of them that day. But just even that 15 or 20 minute ride, together was important. And then, thankfully we had the opportunity where she could be home when they got home. I firmly believe that somebody needs to be there, that they're not at home by themselves. Idle hands. We know what happens there. And then also making sure that they did after school sports and stayed busy was a big thing. And us being involved in their sports or us being involved in their schooling was a big thing. So I think work-life balance is huge, and you have to have that to have a successful family. That people in the business world understand family, and they understand you have to have a work-life balance. You don't have to be all work all the time. Because anybody that expects that out of you is not the person that you want to be working for, and that's not what you want. You've got to have the work-life balance. Great takeaway on that. I'm glad we touched on that. That was so important. I think also a very important part of your story. So that's great. I want to ask you a couple final things. One, what would you do different? Any big things that you, as a part of your journey, would you have done differently? That maybe it was a mistake, maybe it was a failure, maybe it was just something you said, I just would have done this materially differently. I think you brought up one. Like you said, I brought my dad, and then I assembled a team, and you probably would have, you ultimately did that. So I'll give you that one. That was a good one. Any other big areas where you would have done differently? I would tell you, if I could do it all over again, I would trust myself more. We talked about going out and getting all the work you could get to make the payroll and do whatever you do. I would not grow as fast as we grew. I would tell you that slow and steady wins the race. And it's funny because all these sayings and all these slogans that you see everywhere, they really are true. Trust yourself, slow and steady. Because if you're doing it slow and steady, you're doing it right, you're not in a hurry, you're not making mistakes, you're not compromising quality, you're not compromising a relationship. We grew really fast, and we made some pretty big mistakes in our growth. And we did some really good things. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, clearly.
But I would tell you, if I could do it all over again, I would have done it the way I intended, which was just a couple of jobs a year, steady growth, doing it slow and steady. That's the biggest thing that I've learned in this business.
Another great takeaway. I asked an earlier question. I'm going to ask the final question on this about what do you enjoy most about being an entrepreneur? I'll ask it a little differently. What's the most rewarding component of being an entrepreneur, founding business owner, and now you get to look back and enjoy some of your success? What's the most rewarding part?
It's going to be real cheesy in my answer, and I'm going to tell you this, but I love seeing other people's success from our success. Look, I've done it.
That's not cheesy. That's great. It's a great answer.
It's a very generic answer.
Well, it's authentic. It's a good answer.
I hear that.
Yeah.
But it's very true. I love seeing some of our guys buy their first homes. Mm-hmm. I love seeing some of our guys have a family. Mm-hmm. I love seeing guys at our Christmas party or Thanksgiving party or mid-year parties. I love them bringing their families by and introducing their wives to me. Seeing everybody else's success is the best part about being an entrepreneur. And I can say that because I'm okay, right? Mm-hmm. If I wasn't okay and I was struggling, then I would probably think, how can I make it? I would be focusing on myself. Mm-hmm. But because I don't have to focus on myself, I'm able to focus on other people, and seeing their successes is the best outcome there is. There's no doubt in my mind. And anybody who's a CEO should probably answer it that same way.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
You want to see your team be great, because if they're great, everybody will be great.
That's right. Well, let me not mess it up by continuing with more questions and more. That was a fantastic way to end the conversation. A lot of great takeaways. I mean, some of them you might hear from an entrepreneur. Our listeners may have heard, taking chances, making sacrifice, calculated risks, spending on the team. Don't shortchange that. Don't get cheap on your team when you're entering possibly a sale or a liquidity event. Problem solving, trusting yourself, slow and steady growth. Those are just some really great takeaways that hopefully all of our listeners got from today.
Good notes, Luke. Good job.
Yeah, of course. I was listening. Well, thank you. You did a great job, and thank you for being here, Omar. I appreciate your time. And
I appreciate the opportunity.
We continue to wish you a lot of success.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet.